Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the C-bet and in position segment of the course. This is going to obviously be a crucial part of the course. It's part of the course where you're going to face this kind of thing going on over and over again. Playing in position, fold to you on the button, you raise, big blind defense, a different kind of board texture comes down. Right now, you're going to be unfamiliar with everything on the screen. It's all kind of brand new. So I'm just going to direct you around the screens. Oh, so First of all, we have this thing here. So this has got all the boards we're going to look at. I picked a variation of boards. So we have a A-side board, we have a Broadway heavy board, we have a monotone board, we have a dynamic high card board, 10-9 falls into high card, we have a middling very connected rainbow board, we have a paired board, we have a flush draw middling board, which is a little bit lower, and then we have a really low board. So we basically cover the whole of, not the whole of poker, but like all different kind of board textures here to have a decent understanding, to get some decent mechanics. Then here I have 100 big blinds. What this strategy is, a screenshot of Peer Solver. I've run 5 sizings for everything. Then we have, I'll just pull this up as well. So this is the Peer Solver initial output. So you can see here that we actually have 4 sizings plus all in, but there's not going to be all in used for 100 big blinds deep. But for some of the other, some of the other stuff like 15 big blinds, there will be. So we have a screenshot of this down here as 100 big blinds. We then have a 40 big blind screenshot in the middle, just so we can kind of compare them next to each other. Then on the right hand side, we have a 15 big blind screenshot. So 100 big blinds, deep stack, mid stack, and then shallow stack. I think it's important to look at 3 different stack sizes. This is exactly how I study, by the way. Then on this little table here, you're going to see this a lot. These things are going to change around, but we have the board, we have the stack size, we have the percentage of check, bet small, bet medium, bet large for the different stack sizes, obviously. Then I've gave a kind of simplified response of what I think is good to use. So yeah, I can share this with you guys too if you want, of course. If you just ask or whatever in the comments or to support, we'll make sure to get this out to you. Then we have a takeaway thing here where I basically write down the takeaways, and I'm going to go through some of the stuff with you now. So yeah, what we're going to look at first of all is 100 big blinds. We're going to go from left to right. So from 100 big blinds, you can see it's a board texture where typically we're not going to be doing too much small betting. There's basically none going on, like 5% of the time, and there's no real big betting going on. It's a board where we just do loads of kind of medium betting. We don't really have too many hands which are like really, really incentivized, just like get all the money in now, get loads of protection. Like even a hand like, let's say, pocket sevens, it's not thrilled about just slamming loads of money in. Whereas if you take a board like 10-9-5, 10-9-5, for example, if we have pocket jacks, we really want to slam as much money in as possible. So that's going to be the difference between these two boards. Peer Solver's just jumping around here a little bit. So yeah, let's have a look at some other stuff. So yeah, no small sizing going on. There's no real hand which wants to like just nudge the pot up a little bit. It's all hands which have like pretty good equity, like a 4, like a top pair, like a second pair, a hand which may want to bluff, like a 6, like a 5. Some hands betting for value, like these 5, 6s, and 7s. But one of the main reasons why we're not going for some small betting, you can see this very often when we think about C betting, is that our high cards just generally don't want to bet. And looking here, we can kind of have the 2 takeaways. So if we can never get a better hand to fold, we don't bet. And we can't. So for example, our king 10s, king jacks, king queens, they don't bet because ace high never folds. Whereas our king 7s, king 6s, they start bluffing the flop because we can make king 9 fold, king 10 fold. Again with the queen X, we bluff our queen 8s, queen 9s, queen 10s because we can make our opponent fold their queen jacks or maybe their king queens. This kind of half pot sizing. Same with the 10x, same with the 9x. We're going to play the strongest hands in all the ranges, relatively passive, and the weaker hands kind of aggressive, just to have a very efficient bet. So yeah, if we can't make a better hand fold, or there's not many better hands to fold in this kind of situation, we're going to take away the small bet, because the small bet is often used when we're going to, most likely, range bet and bet all of our hands, or bet very frequently with lots of hands. especially because we're so deep as well, 100 big blinds deep. We're just putting, like, let's say we put in a small bet with king queen, then our opponent check raises with king five. We've allowed him to do that for quite a cheap price, and the big blind also has a lot of hands which will interact here, whereas we don't have as many. So if we look, for example, what the response is when we do go for this half, this medium size is often going to be like 50-60%. So when we go for this 60% size in here, we can see straight away why it's so efficient. We're making them fold king queen, we're making them fold king jack, we're making them fold queen jack. It's like, again, we're making them fold this bunch of hands here. So when we have this bunch of hands, we just bluff them because it's very efficient, because we make them fold the slightly stronger hands. At 100 big blinds deep, I believe our opponents will also make the mistake of not free betting king queen offsuit pre-flop as aggressively as they should, not free betting king jack offsuit aggressively as they should, not finding the queen 10 off, jack 10 off, jack 9 off, king 9 off bluffs pre-flop. I believe our opponents will just pure call them. I think they're also going to have like queen 9 suited, queen 8 suited, jack 8 suited, jack 9 suited, queen jack suited, king 10 suited at a higher frequency than what they should do. So because they play too passively pre-flop from the big blind, the efficiency of our bets here are just, I would just range bet, I would just bet these at full frequency, sorry. So I wouldn't bother mixing. If any hand is interested in betting in Peer Solver, it's going to be interested in betting a full frequency against population, because also we're going to see that he's also supposed to check raise a decent amount of hands, which most likely our opponent isn't going to check raise as aggressively, I don't think. So yeah, I think that's an important thing to note. So that's kind of the key takeaway here, is that high cards are not benefiting from folding our better. If high cards are not benefiting from folding our better, they play passive and more aggressive with the middling cards, which either have equity, and what I mean by this is they have equity like a 10-5 or a king 5. A king 5 wants to bet because it has equity. A queen 6 or jack 6, they want to bet because they have equity. Around the 4-3-2, they have blockers to the continuing range, but they also can fold out some hands, and they also have fold equity against some slightly stronger hands, which is going to be a little bit of a mechanic and a little bit of a key takeaway about low boards when you are 100 big blinds deep. So because of that, what I say here at 100 big blinds deep is don't worry about the 5% small bets, don't worry about the 2% large bets. Our simplified strategy here is going to be only to use one size, and it's only to use the medium size, and we're going to use it a little bit more aggressively. So where it says we want to check 53% of the time, we're going to end up checking around about 40% of the time, because we are going to full frequency bet whenever we have a kind of 75% bet or an 80% bet, which is going into this full frequency bet. So I think that's going to be how we play 100 big blinds deep. So moving on to 40 big blinds. At 40 big blinds, we can see straight away there's some bigger betting going on. So if we look at 100 big blinds, there's 2% big bet going on. And at 40 big blinds, we can see there's 15% big bet going on. So there's a big difference between mid stack and deep stack. And one of the reasons why is because if we do have a hand like, let's say, pocket sevens, 100 big blinds deep, or pocket eights, or even pocket jacks, like pocket jacks, we don't want to just like bet and stack off. Whereas when we are 40 big blinds deep, we're going to have some hands which we're just fine. If we are beat 40 big blinds deep, it's just more of a cooler. We don't mind if we lose this many big blinds for this kind of hand. So we're going to see here straight away, I have the sim up again, that when our opponent checks, we start to have some bigger betting. And some of this bigger betting is going to be, some of this kind of, this is actually 4-3-2 flush draw, which is going to be on the board. 4-3-2 rainbow is going to be this board, and we should see a different output. And yeah, you're going to see here that straight away we have this 15% bigger betting. And when we see what this is around, it's going to be some of these overpairs which are going to have more need for protection, and aces which are just happy to get it in. It's going to be some top pairs like ace 4 and king 4, which is happy to stack off. Whereas at 100 big blinds deep, we're not really happy to stack off with ace 4, king 4. We value bet, and then when they raise, we continue, but we don't really want to get it all in. But I imagine often here we're going to see that we go for the large bet, the 58. Our opponent will go for the all-in, and then straight away we can see that we play all-in with our ace 4, our king 4, our open-ended straight draws with backdoor flush draws, our aces, some of our strong ace-x hands, which are going to have equity. We're going to see this even more often when we get to 15 big blinds deep. This is going to be more apparent. You're going to see this. Five, sixes, sevens, eights, nines, tens, any overpair, we just happy to get it in. Ace four again, we're happy to get it in. If we do bet a hand like ace three with a backdoor flush draw, which is the only ones which we choose to bet, we decide to just check. Oh no, actually, we're just getting all of the ace threes on the flop. We just have enough equity. We have a pair plus a straight draw. It's just we're okay to get it in. Our ace is going to be live, etc. So yeah, at 40 big blinds deep, essentially, we have more hands which we're happy to get in. So because of that, we are more interested in making the pot bigger straight away ourselves, rather than 100 big blinds deep when we want to bet more of a medium or kind of a smaller size. So at 40 big blinds deep, we can see here there's more bigger betting going on from hands that need protection, because quite simply, in game, this is quite like this may seem like quite a dumb thing to say, like quite a simplistic thing to say, but poker is a very simple game. But we have more hands which just we can get it in. We don't mind to get it in. It's literally as simple as that. When looking at which other hands go into the bigger bet size, we can see here that we have some 6x that we bluff with, and we also just bluff some random overcards like Jack 8 suited, 10 8 suited, 9 8 suited. Typically, the way that I see it is we don't necessarily need to go so big with these hands. When we look at the response here, we can see we can just fold out all of these hands for a smaller price. We can see that when we use the large size, and our opponent is never folding a straight draw, never folding any, even a gut shot, never folding any pairs, never folding any second pairs, never folding any third pairs, never folding any ace highs, well, not folding many ace highs. So when they don't fold many ace highs, we're not really that interested in going for a huge bet against population. So the way that I kind of would make my range here is I would play a large sizing with these kind of hands, the 5x and the 6x hands in position, and also with my strong 4x that I want to get it in with. And then I would go for a kind of smaller sizing with this middling part of the range. So the only thing really that changes about this range here and this range here essentially is that all of these hands which go into a medium bet for 100 big blinds deep, I just put these into a smaller sizing, 40 big blinds deep, and then start having a bigger sizing with the top pairs, with some high equity draws, with the over pairs which need a bit more protection, stuff like that. So that's kind of how I'm changing my range. And it's quite easy to work out. I think that we play the same range as 100 big blinds deep. We just put it into a smaller size because we are slightly more shallow, and then we have that larger sizing with our hands which can get it in. That's literally as simple as we need to think about for this. We can see that the frequencies are very, very similar. So it's 51% check versus 53% check. So our strategy shouldn't be changing too much. The only thing which is changing a lot here, essentially, is that we're using this large size. And so the way that I simplify this strategy, instead of playing 10% small, 25% medium, 15% big, is mix small and large. And most of my medium sizings are just going to fit into the small size. And so I'm going to have around about 30 to 35% small bets. I'm going to have around about 15 to 20% bigger bets. And again, this check-in frequency should decrease to around about 40 to 45%. So that's typically how I'm going to play 40 big blinds deep. The next up is going to be 15 big blinds. So 15 big blinds here, you can see this is the smaller version and this is the larger version. We're just going to pop out of the larger version just for a second. So we can see here that in the little table here that now we can see that actually 15 big blinds deep, there's a lot of smaller betting going on, and we still maintain this larger betting. So the larger betting is typically going to come from the similar kind of hands. So it's coming from these ace fours, these king fours. It's coming from these fives, these sixes, these sevens, these eights, the overpairs that we want to bet. Again, it's coming from these ace fours, ace threes down here as well. But now we do want to have a smaller sizing. And the reason why we want to have a smaller sizing at 15 big blinds theoretically than 40 big blinds is because when our opponent has equity with 15 big blinds, you can see, I'm just going to show you here, that when we go for the bet here, we're going to see that our opponent just starts fast playing loads of hands. There's loads of shoves. Pink is always shove for me, by the way. There's loads of shoves going on with even hands like king 3, whereas at 40 big blinds, king 3 most likely isn't going to just stick in 40 big blinds. And you can see here when we go for small bet, our opponent again is going to have some raises, non all in. So if we go smaller we go, the less incentivized our opponent is to shove. So we end up realizing more equity with our hands in general. So, and also if we just bet a hand like, let's say we bet 10-8 and our opponent has king 3, 40 big blinds deep, typically he may call, and then we just get to realize equity because our 10-8 gets to play down the streets. Whereas at 15 big blinds, he's just shoving in with these hands, which means we don't get to realize equity with hands which were bluffing the flop. And all of our bluffs here on the flop, they're actually quite nice bluffs because they all have like 2 overcards. They have backdoor flush draws. They like, if our opponent does have king 3, like jack 8, it's like not a favorite against king 3, but it's not that far behind. So the strategy typically for 15 big blinds and 40 big blinds is going to essentially just be the strategy which I suggested to play for the mid stack. You can see there's one big difference. Let's have a look at yourself if you can notice the difference, because you should be getting into the habit of learning to just look at a map, look at a PO map, and say, okay, what can I take away from this PO map? What stands out for me straight away? And if you see what stands out for us straight away here is that we have some really thin value bets compared to 100 big blinds deep. So if we look at 100 big blinds deep, if I just click on to, oh, that's going to be a shit show. If we look at 100 big blinds deep, our ace-x is playing very passive. Our offsuit ace-x is playing very passive. Whereas when we look at 15 big blinds deep, our ace-x starts playing a lot more aggressive. Because if our opponent does start to raise, we're just going to have enough equity to get it in. If we have ace-9 suited with a backdoor flush draw, and we bet small and our opponent goes for a raise, we're going to see that our ace-x just gets to continue really, really happily, no folding. If our opponent goes for a shove, we can see that we can easily call all of our ace-x. So this is a kind of good mechanic to take away straight away, is that if our opponent can, if we can get in our ace-x versus our opponent's aggression, that's when we start betting our ace-x, because we start getting value with our hand as well, because they will call with worse hands. We start getting protection for our hand against a hand like jack 8 off when we have, say, ace queen. So our ace-x, once we can start betting and getting it in, we start adding this to our betting range. We can see king queen is also in there as well, whereas a hand like king 10 isn't. So, if we can start betting and continuing versus a raise, that's when we start adding in our ace-x. But 100 big blinds deep, we don't really want to bet ace-x, because sure, when they raise, we call, but then they make us fold our equity on the turn because they blast the turn and we end up folding, whereas here, we're not folding our ace-x, we're just going to end up going with our hand. So we have a look at how some turns play here. Well, if they go in, we just end up calling, so that's one thing. But when we go small and they raise, we're going to call our ace-x. We actually just go for a shove with our ace-x. We say, okay, we're going to just take our equity. We don't want to end up folding our hand on the turn. They're going to get it in with some worse hands too. So they're going to get in 5x, 6x. They're going to get in pairs. If you think about a hand like ace 8 against a hand like king 3, ace 8 has 4 5s. It has 3 aces. It has 3 8s. And it has a backdoor flush draw. So we have straight away around about 50% equity, or almost 50% equity anyway, against the pair. So for 40 big blinds, 15 big blinds deep, we're okay, let's run it, no problem. We can get it in. So yeah, again, the takeaway here that I wrote for 15 big blinds, just to be consistent, is more smaller betting because of the SPR. More hands don't mind too much about putting money in, equals our check frequency decreases. So you can see here, there's a big change now in our check-in frequency for 15 big blinds. We're checking here 42% of the time versus 53% of the time, theoretically. And the main addition here to our betting range is going to be the ace-x, because it adds up, especially the offsuit combinations versus the offsuit combinations here, which are basically empty. Again, hands like ace 3 and ace 2 are also pure getting it in, which is going to be a big difference versus before. So yeah, I think this is going to be pretty good thing to look at, and hopefully you guys like this format of doing this type of video, because if you don't, you're not going to like the next videos. But hopefully I like to study this way. I think it's very efficient, very effective. Just spending this time myself going through, obviously it's going to take me longer to do this than the 20 minutes you have of watching this video, but just doing this myself straight away, if I spent, an hour going through each of them, and obviously reading this now yourself takes 20 minutes, but for myself, I have to go through and write all the takeaways and analyze the grids and where the frequencies are coming from, etc. But if I spend, say, an hour or whatever studying 4-3-2 and looking at different stack sizes, I understand it pretty well now. And this is how I would go through it. So hopefully you like this video, and if you did, check the next video. If you don't, message me and ask for your money back. But no, it should be good, should be fine, and I'm going to finish now.